Welcome to the Legally Clueless 100th episode, a 60-minute celebration of this momentous occasion, with special guests Jerry, Kadzo, Bobby, and of course, your host, Adelle. The Legally Clueless podcast started on the 18th of March 2019 with an 8-minute episode full of a shaky, terrified, and excited voice. Excited about new beginnings, building a space for Africans to have agency over their stories and a space they can connect. What started off as a dream has grown to be an instrumental movement in adding more African voices to the global African narrative. This is the 100th Legally Clueless episode.
Welcome to the 100th Legally Clueless episode. I am so glad that 100 weeks ago, I overcame overwhelming self-doubt to begin this journey and create a space where I could authentically be me and also invite other Africans to do the same. In this special episode, you'll get to hear some of the stories that have been shared on the podcast before and one new one. Let's start with one that quite a few people have deemed their favorite. Kadzo's story about buying him curtains worth 75,000 shillings.
So in my past life, I decided to go out for a drink with a few of my friends. We had gone to take a few shots outside, and when we were coming back in, I saw this guy. At that moment, I was like, wow, this is it. So I was attracted to Brian because he was tall. I have a thing for skinnies. I approached him. I was going to buy a drink anyway, and he was at the bar. And we sparked up a conversation, and he was an interesting guy. And I was just like, wow, this is it. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah, so fast forward 2 months later, we chat every day. We hang out, He's told me all these stories about how his life is fabulous, I'm trying to keep up with him, trying to cheat him, how my life is also fabulous. That time I was jobless, by the way. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So he took me to his home, and it looked like, when I tell you the writing is on the wall, the writing is always on the wall. Take it and bounce, okay? Anyway, so his apartment looked like more or less a stopover, He didn't have shears, he had no curtains, and for me, right now, that's a big no. And he told me like, now this is our place. Please get cozy. There's the bedroom, that's our bedroom. So I decided to, spruce the home up. Bought a few things here and there. Bought a few pans. And I was like, would it be nice to surprise this man with like some dope-ass curtains? Yeah, and I was thinking, you know what? Let me not cheapen out. I'll buy him some good curtains because, this is our home. So I want to make him feel like I'm being more involved, right? Took myself to a high-end, luxurious, and all the other words to describe fancy furniture store in Nairobi. And I acquired him 75,000 shillings worth of curtains. And I put them in the car, went back to the house, and spruced the place up. Can you believe that this man, first of all, showed up the next day? Not even that day, the next day. And not even, it's like, oh, wow, you changed the color. I was like, niggas. Anyway, fast forward to about a month and a half later, in the dead of night, we're asleep. I get a call, and this was at around 12:31 in the morning, and it's a lady on the other side of the phone, and she tells me, hi, Kadzo, right? And I'm like, wow, yes. She's like, okay, cool. Are you with Brian? And I'm like, who might this be? Then she's like, you don't worry, if you're with him, please tell him that his son is feeling unwell. Can he wrap it up wherever he is and come back home quickly? Wrap it up. Wow. And I asked her, so who might you be? He's like, he'll know. Don't worry. It's the wife. Tell him to wrap it up quickly wherever he is and come home quickly. She hung up. So me in my head, I'm like, what? Wait. Wife. Okay. Home. Home. So where exactly am I? So I wake him up and I tell him, do you recognize this number? So he sees the number and it like knocks him out for a bit. So he wakes up. He tells me, where did you get this number from? Have you been snooping on my phone? Nigga, your wife has just called me at 1 a.m. and she's at, apparently, your home. And here you are accusing me about going through your phone? Niggas, it's the audacity for me. The audacity. Anyway, so I tell him, yeah, some lady has called me, told me that your son is sick and you need to go home quickly. And he's like, really? Okay, give me a second. So he jumps out of the bed, gets dressed, and then he tells me, I'll explain when I get back. And he leaves. And I was left alone. And I was wondering, okay, I mean, what is happening? So Brian comes back the next day in the morning at around 9, showers, does a change of clothing, tells me he's going to work. He'll come and explain later on in the evening. He came back past midnight, okay, drunk. And he told me, oh, the first time I met you, I told you that I'm going through a lot of things. And I was honest with you and I didn't lie to you. It's just that I told you that night and you never brought it up again. So I didn't lie to you. I want you to know that first and foremost, I didn't lie to you. Dude, your wife just called me at 1 a.m. How did you not lie to me? So I knew of his son. I just thought that the son was from the situationship that he was talking about. He always used to talk about like his ex. Turned out that it was his ex-wife who was not an ex, who was still actively in his life. So I later came to find out that he had 2 homes. So he had the house that he lived in, that was his home. And then he had this other bachelor pad that he'd take like his extracurricular activities to, me being included. And he told me that unfortunately the woman is crazy. That's what she does. She doesn't want to move on. So she calls a lot of the ladies that he wants to move on with in his life. And threatens them and always does this. And then he proceeded to cry, guys. So, I mean, yeah, he played with the emotional aspect and stuff. And, I loved this man, So I stayed. I wanted to make him happy. He made me happy. Bear in mind, me staying opened the doors even further for leeway. This was second last to like the final straw. Our anniversary was coming up. Not that. Our anniversary. So I decided to do something special. I bought like nice scented candles. I visited an lingerie shop. And then I told him, babe, please come home early. I have a surprise for you. And he told me, oh, nice, cool. I'll be there by 9. Put on some Tony Braxton, some Marion in there, Really nice mix on YouTube. By 8, I had petals. Growth is a beautiful thing. So 9, 10, 11, 12. I have no message, no missed call. It's getting late. The candle is halfway burnt. The playlist is over. So I call him. And he's in a noisy place. There's a lot of noise in the background. And he tells me, I'm on my way. Don't sleep, I'm coming. I'm on my way. So I tell him, cool. Then he hung up. So that's midnight. 1, 2, 3. I'd given up. I switched off the candles. I was going to bed. So when I was on my way to bed, I could hear footsteps on the stairs. So I'm just like, finally, he's come. So I've gone back, put on the candles, sprayed myself. I'm ready for the night to begin now, right? So as the steps keep on increasing, so did the noises. And the noises were not just one. I could hear 2, 3. Like there's some people having a conversation. So I locked the door. I left the key inside because, you never know, it might not be him. And he inserted the key and he tried to open. And then now I could fully hear the voices. So he calls me and he tells me, yo, open the door. And as he said that, I could hear 3 other voices in the back. This guy had come with his friends. So there was me blowing out the candles, trying to sweep up the petals, doing like a whole overhaul, turned off the music. Went, opened the door with a gown. This guy proceeds to enter with his friends. Okay, he served them the food that I had cooked, like for us. He didn't even eat. And then I could hear his friends saying, hey, umsako anajua kupika, in translation is, hey, this your woman, see she can cook. We should be coming here often, yeah. And they proceeded to drink until morning. I have been waiting the whole night to celebrate our what? Anniversary. Okay. Let us fast forward, right? The final straw. We are out. He's at the bar. You're supposed to procure some shots. And then I see him talking to this other lady. And his hand was on the nape of her waistline. And he looked a bit too cozy, a bit too comfortable. I started feeling some type of way, right? So he was looking to her face and like they're having a convo. So I slotted myself inside in the middle and I told him, hi Brian, introduce me to your friend. And he's like, yeah, sure. Meet Kare, this is Kadzo, my friend. And I'm like, your friend? I'm like, ha 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 ha. He says that a lot. I'm his girlfriend. And he tells me, whoa. No, you're not. I'm like, yes, I am. He's like, no, you're not. And then Kare's like, okay, I'll just come back later. So she left the 2 of us there. And I'm like, why would you say that in front of people? And he told me, get this. I've never asked you to be my girlfriend. I think now the writing was on the wall, all of it. Like that one, the way when you pray to God to give you a sign, and then he gives you the sign, and then you go back to pray, and then your eyes are closed. And the sign is there, and you're like, God, please give me a sign. God just said, this is the sign. Anyway, I stormed out and I left. Crying my ass off. Went home. We didn't speak for about a week. Then he called me and he told me to come over so that we can talk. I'm like, okay, cool. Took myself to his place and he told me, don't get it twisted. We're still going slow. This is, remember when I told you to take note of? Anniversary. Here I was dating someone who was not dating me back. Anyway. I'm at his place and he tells me, the normal lies too. I thought that maybe he'd do better now that he's the one who wants to get me. He didn't. Nothing changed. So after a week and a half of so many pep talks from my friends, so many this, so many that, I left. I eventually left. Right now, he has 3 kids with the same woman. They're still married. I make a point not to follow him that much, but there was once that I was perusing the internet on my banner accounts. We all have those. No? Y'all don't have banner accounts? You guys don't know what you're missing. You guys want to be busted over there that it was you who was talking. Nah, bro. I was talking with my banner account. And I see a picture of him and yet another babe, and in the background were my sterling, brilliant beige curtains. This nigga still has my curtains hanging. Oh. So maybe I'm going to make a point to go for them. I don't know. Maybe I'll consult my crazy girlfriends and we'll see about that.
Legally Clueless has so far recorded over 150 stories by Africans in Kenya, Senegal, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the United States of America. The podcast has also done a university tour where over 50 stories from young Africans in USIU Africa, Meru University, Riara University, and more shared their stories.
So one of the stories recorded during the Legally Clueless University tour was an inspiring story by Bobby. A story that will take you from flipping a coin to decide if he'll live or die, to winning 7 film awards. Bobby is our next storyteller.
After now being done with primary, and situations back home were tricky because my mom had left her job because she wanted to follow God full time. So the only option was now to go to a public school. So I was like, cool, I'm a man, so it is what it is. I remember the first night of secondary, I couldn't even sleep. I was frightened. So my sisters took me to school, and I remember a couple of older boys they pretended they were helping me carry my stuff. By the time we reached the dorm, I had nothing. Like my bucket ya kuoga, everything was, so the only thing I was left with were the clothes that I wore coming to school. So you can imagine, I have literally nothing. And the school I've been taken to is in Island's top 5 hardest schools. Like that was one of them, And my dad, God bless him, started noticing I started changing because I started now adapting to life, the Islam's life. Most cool kids call it ob life, ODs. Yeah, so at one point of my life, I was an ob, an OD. And yeah, so my dad was able to see it quick and fast. And he was like, yo, you have to switch schools. So I went from out of the frying pan into the fire. So he took me through, I think I was in okay, let's say this school I was in, because I don't want to mention it, it was number 5. Now the school he took me to now was number 2. Here where everyone, there's a Swahili saying goes, pwagu hupata pwaguzi, where a small thief finds a bigger thief. Now that's the school. You had to tie your shoes like a necklace, so that when you wake up in the morning, you still have your shoes, like guys didn't have mercy, I finished my KCSE, and honestly, I wasn't expecting to pass because, like there's physics paper, I slept during the whole paper. The only thing I knew, the only question they asked that I knew was my index number. So the rest of the paper was blank, I knew for a fact. So I was even shocked when my grades came out and I had a C. So yeah, I could go to uni. It was not a big embarrassment. Normally, my first choice was, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. So one day we were watching telly with my mom, and we see Larry Mado doing the trend. And my mom was like, yo, you could actually do this. And I was like, for real? Hey, sema ngwe. And I'm going to do journalism. My mom was like, hey, ngwe. So I'm like, cool. Tomorrow, journalism it is. So that's how I ended up doing journalism. And my first pick was Multimedia University because I thought it was kind of public as well. And my dad was like, yo, my friend told me about Triara University. And I laughed. I can't forget that day. Like my dad was very serious telling me, I want you to go to Riara. I laughed. I was like, bro, the whole fees I used to pay in secondary is not even one semester at Riara. And my dad was like, you just go check. So when I went, I found out, kumbe it was just 3,000 more than Multimedia University. And so he told me, make a choice. Where are you going? Hey, I saw the brochures and I saw foreign girls. I kid you not. That's how I ended up going to Riara University. I looked at the brochure like this and I saw, wow. I've never seen Indian girls. Oh, I'm going to be in the same class with girls from Pakistan. Oh my God, this is amazing. So I called my dad and I was like, yo, I'm going to Riara. So now I joined uni, and it was culture shock. I won't even lie to you, because now you're toughening up and now you expect to be soft. So I'm in Riara, I'm seeing people leaving their laptops. So I'm like, wow, you do that here? They're smartphones and it's iPhones, At that time, my phone, I'm using a rubber band to hold the battery and the phone together. And I'm seeing people with iPhones. Hey, I'm like, Kidogo, hey, God, are you tempting me? Hey, am I supposed to go back to my old ways? But I was like, nah, I have to level up a bit. I was really getting along with it because now I found my purpose in Riara, which was now filmmaking. And when I started doing filmmaking, I did my first short film in 2016. I was actually the first student to fill an entire hall. So we were selling a ticket for 100 bob for a 7-minute movie. And we had more than 400 people. It was really dope to see more than 400 people show up on my first short film premiere. So that was really nice, and I was now getting into a comfort zone where I felt like now, hey, my name is now in everyone's mouth. Hey, that guy from journalism, Bobby, Bobby, Bobby. Now I'm not Bobby from Eastlands. Now, hey, I'm Pat. I'm a cool kid now. Then in 2017, we got a new dean. And this is where the trouble began. For some strange reason, one day the studio was locked and I went to complain. And I was like, yo, I need to use the computers. So I went to the dean's office. She was a new dean. And I was like, yo, why is the studio locked? And she was like, no, don't worry. It's just some small things. And by the way, what's your name? What's your admission number? I gave her my name, my admission number. So she noticed I wasn't in session because the same year my dad's contract ended. So now both parents were not working. So I was just in school because I didn't want to go back to being idle and going back to the streets, yani mtaani, and just chilling with people. So for me, school was my escape. I could come, edit, use the computers, use the cameras, and just keep on adding on my craft. But she noticed, and she called me back to her office the next day, and she was like, yo, you're not in class. So I explained it to her. And she was like, at first she was very nice. I actually thought this is a really nice lady. She was smiling, telling me, oh, don't worry. Okay, you just do this. Tomorrow I'll come in and we'll have a conversation on that. Don't worry. Okay, you go. So the next day comes and she's like, you have to pack up your stuff and leave. I'm like, what? How? At that time I felt like I was the king of Riara. What do you mean? Pack up my stuff and leave? Yeah, she's like, yeah, if you're not a student, you can't come and just use equipment and stuff. This is an institution. This is not an Airbnb where you can just come and chill. Like, this is an institution, it runs. So I was like explaining my situation. It's tough back at home, but she didn't even listen. For the first time I cried in front of someone, and I was like, please, I really don't want to go home, man. Don't do this to me, please. But she really didn't care. So I left and I was like, aye, cool. And I got a call from the deputy vice chancellor telling me, yo, you're not allowed in the school anymore, so just go home. So I went home. And that was really one of the darkest moments in my life, because now I was there like, yo, what happens? So I knew now I'm doomed, like there's nothing I could do. So it's now going back home, and I had to change everything. I had to change my sleeping patterns, because you want the days to be shorter, so you sleep more hours, so that you can't face your reality. And I remember at one point I became a bat. Like during the day, I was dead asleep. At night, when no one is doing anything, that's when now I'm up, at least that's when now I can maneuver. And I remember it really got tough, because I was just seeing a month later, my friends are graduating from their diplomas, and I was supposed to be in that class. So I'm seeing them having fun, going for parties. There I am, just like, wow, my situation is getting worse, and it got to me now, like it really got to me. And I remember I used to go to church, worship, pray to God, cry, like I used to cry, just tell God, man, come through for me, please. I need something, please. Nothing. The girl I was dating at the time, she also left. So I really had no one, I just felt alone. And, with African parents, they don't believe in things like depression. Like depression, what's depression? So they couldn't even notice the change in me. So I remember this one night, I was just like, you know what? I've been going to church, nothing's been working. Here I am, nothing's working. Bro, it's time to go. Like, I've read the Bible and it says, riches are in heaven. My riches are in heaven. What am I doing on earth then? Let me go collect my riches, And I was there and I just felt like, now I'm done. Like, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, one early morning, and I was like, now I'm done. I'm actually done. This is the end for me. There's nothing more for me in this life, So I remember 3 a.m. one night there, I'm crying. I'm just like now looking at my options. What do I have? Bunch of expired tablets or slitting my wrist. Those are the options that were there on the table. And I remember I was just like, God, I'm giving you one last time. This is the last time. And if you don't show yourself today, I'm coming to see you. If you don't visit me today, I'm coming to visit you. You just know that that's the way today is ending. And I was so broke. The only thing I had was a 50-cent coin. I don't even know if they exist now. And I remember I tossed that coin. I was like, so if it lands on heads, because a coin only has two sides, it's either yes or no. And I prayed and I told God, if it lands on heads, then it means you want me and I'm coming. I'm going through. If it lands on tails, I'm not going to do it. So I threw the coin the first time and it went on tails. I was like, beginner's luck. Let's switch sides. Let's switch sides. So I'm like, okay, now heads, I'm not doing it. Tails, I switched. I flipped that coin more than 6 times. And every time it landed at no, which was very strange. There's no probability at least 6 times. You were just, me honestly, out of those 6, I was just waiting for that one, but nothing. So I remember that night I just cried myself to sleep. And after crying myself to sleep, I was like, okay, Sawa, you said you still want me on this earth, then show me what you want me to do. And slowly by slowly, I started developing an interest on YouTube. And now I was like, oh, snap, hey, YouTube. Started seeing other YouTubers from the UK doing group YouTube. And I was like, that's so dope. And since I'm from Eastlands and my friends in school are from Westlands, Westie, it's like East meets West. Oh, snap, that's a really good name. So that's how I came up with the name for our channel, East meets West. And now I have to sneak into school to shoot videos and then dip, because I can't come during the weekday because the dean is there. So we started doing that, and then one of my lecturers, big shout out to Mr. Kinyeki, there was an East African Student Film Festival, and the short film I did in 2016, he was like, yo, why don't we submit this film? And I was like, yeah. And then there was another film I did with a smartphone, and I was like, there's also a category for a smartphone, so let's submit. And I was like, okay, I don't have anything to lose. So we went for that competition, and by God's grace, we won 8 awards. And as I said, I had a phone, like my phone had rubber bands, like 100 rubber bands holding the battery. And I remember I won an Infinix phone for best smartphone film, and I was crowned Infinix Rising Star at that time. So it really felt nice. And at that moment, that's when the school was like, hey, who's this Bobby? What can we do for him to appreciate him? Because I was the first student to ever win anything in terms of multimedia journalism in the school. And that's when, where I'm really grateful, the owners of the school called me and they asked my lecturer, like, what could we do for him? Buy him equipment? And they're like, no, this guy hasn't been in school for 2 semesters. He's just been home doing nothing. They asked why. He can't afford fees and stuff like that. They're like, and you guys let him go. So they called me back and they were like, yo, we've paid everything. Even your graduation gown, it's been catered for. You just come back to school because you're really talented in this film stuff. So that's how I ended up going back to university. And honestly, looking back at it, if someone asks me, is there a God? I'm like, yeah, because everything just ended up aligning, very well. And after that, now I was back in university, and I feel 2018, now that was 2017, 2018 was also a good year because I did my first documentary, which came in 4th in Africa at the Natalie Lorenzo Awards. That's like one of the biggest documentary awards in the world. So we came in 4th, and I won my first Kalasha as well in 2018. So looking back at it, I was like, oh, this is really what I was meant to do, So things just started falling in line. But the thing about going through a phase in life, the pain, one thing I've learned is pain is necessary for growth. Like for you to grow, pain is essential. And up until this very day and age, I was talking to someone and I realized that I never quite let go of everything that ever happened in my life. I always held on to it. The people who hurt me, the people who did anything bad to me, I never quite had closure from the whole situation. And that's when I realized that depression is holding on to the past and anxiety is having worries for the future. So you have to be in the present because that's where everything is happening. That's where the magic is. And in the present, you don't have to carry the weight of what happened or your worries of what's going to happen. You just have to worry about what's happening there and then. Don't just live to die. Make sure that at the end of the day, you live and you leave your mark on earth. And then people, after your death, people will recognize you and people will always appreciate you for it.
In May 2019, Legally Clueless made history by becoming one of the first syndicated podcasts in the region, as international media company Trace picked the podcast to air on Trace Radio in Kenya, a move that revolutionized how Kenyans would interact with podcasts and the future of podcasting in East Africa. February 2020 saw the introduction of the Legally Clueless Residencies, a series of workshops that seek to arm young Africans with the skills needed to build successful podcasts. The podcast ended 2020 on a high by surpassing 1 million online streams.
I am immensely grateful to Trace for believing in Legally Clueless's mission, its purpose, and most importantly, in my dream and new beginnings. Something our next storyteller will speak of, new beginnings. Here is Njeri's story of 21 days of crying and 6 months of healing.
So in 2016, I just got out of an 8-year relationship, and 4 out of those 8 years, we were married. It was a very difficult relationship, and it took me a very, very long time to get to the point where I was able to leave, because it was a very violent relationship. And as a mother of 2, I felt like at that point, the most important thing for me and for the children was to leave and to find a better space for myself and for the children. So on the last day of this relationship, it was a very dramatic day. My then husband hadn't been home for a couple of days, and he had left with my laptop. It was important that I get this laptop back because I needed it to work. And so I reached out to him and I asked him for the laptop, and I said, could you please at least swing by and drop it off? And at this point he said, you know what, in any case, I'm coming to pick my stuff. So I said, oh, okay. At this point I knew the relationship had to end. Something had to give. So when he said that he was coming for his things, I was very okay with that. So he came. As per my expectation, he was extremely aggressive. He was unreasonable, and it was very difficult for us to get a simple conversation going. So I had packed his things one by one, very neatly in a suitcase, in a couple of bags, and put them by the door. In any case, when he came, I wanted him to just neatly organize himself and leave. Unfortunately, that's not how it went. And when he came, he looked for a lot of small reasons to, pick on me and insult me and just say all these sorts of negative things towards me. I really didn't understand what it was, but on this particular day, I knew because of sort of just that aggression. I don't know, that proverbial look in the eye, in the look in his eyes. I knew that this was different. I knew that this was going to be a very violent, episode. And so it was. He came at me, he strangled me. He actually knocked me in the head. He literally head-butted me right on my forehead. He took all the wall hangings down, all the family photos, all the framed wedding photos and all those things, and he threw them at me one by one. He threw his wedding ring at me. And at this point, I had already known that this was going to be the last day that I was going to go through this. I knew that this was the last time I was going to let him, cross boundaries like this with me. And so I just sort of just let it happen. So he got home around noon. So eventually around 1 o'clock, after a lot of this dramatic, fighting scene had taken place, I decided to pick up my stuff and leave. I had stashed all my important documents and my phone and everything with the nanny. I knew it was important that I do this because he would have gone to any great length to inconvenience me at this point. So I stashed everything under her mattress, quite literally, and I ran to the police station. The police station was about 400 meters down the road. So I ran and I filed a report. The reason why I felt that it was important to file a report on this day is because I needed a reason never ever to go back. I hadn't ever filed a report before, so I didn't even know, what the Kenyan police system is. It wasn't the most friendly, I must say, but I did what I had to do, and I got the P3 form. They needed me to go to a hospital and get a physical examination done, and I did that. It was difficult, it was tough, it was painful. I was crying the whole day. The children were at my parents' home because this took place during the December holiday period. So fortunately, all this went down when the children were safely at my parents' home. I had already decided in my mind, I was very clear that this was the last day, but I felt like he was going to do anything to ensure that it wasn't, and to ensure that he leaves me with an indelible mark, at this point, because I hadn't taken my power back from him at this point. When I was in the whole police station situation, the nanny called my mom because I had a list of emergency contacts on the fridge. So she called my mom and told her everything. And so my mom rushed over with my aunt, to help me through the whole hospital situation. When I got back home and the dust had settled, it was so unreal. My kids were there and they were looking at me wondering, like, why is mom here, It was confusing because I hadn't planned. I'm a little bit of a planner. I hadn't planned to be home, so I didn't really know where to begin. It wasn't making a whole lot of obvious sense to me. So I decided to sit down in the study room at my parents' house, and I just took out a notebook and I decided to pen a few things down. At this point, because I knew the relationship had to have ended at some point, I was alive to the fact that there was a sense of moving on that I needed to enter into and heal from whatever had happened that day and in the last, 8 years that had contributed to the pain that I was feeling, at this particular time. So I penned down 3 things. I said, I'm going to cry for 21 days. Now, this is me planning my life. So I said I was going to cry for 21 days. If I need to cry every day for 21 days, I'll cry every day for 21 days. In 6 months, I was very sure that 6 months down the line, I was supposed to be healed enough to have conversations about it, whether it was with his side of the family or my side of the family or a friend or somebody else. I knew 6 months from that day, I needed to have been okay to focus on other things, The third thing I remember very clearly writing was, around a year from now, when I see him, I want to see him like a regular human being. Just like when you see your Uber driver or when you see, somebody there is the front desk at an office. I literally wanted to feel nothing. Like I have no emotion towards this person. I didn't want to carry any bitterness. I didn't want to carry any fear. I didn't want to carry any, sense of helplessness after all the years where I had yielded so much power over to him. I knew a year from then I wanted to feel nothing. Like I wanted to have the most neutral emotion when I see him. Maybe caution, but more than anything, I just wanted to see him as a regular human being. As a mom, I needed to be able to explain it to the children very gracefully and package it for their age, for them to be able to understand, yeah, mom is home, mom is in Shosho's house. This is where I'm going to stay, this is where we're going to stay together, but it is well. So I spent a lot of time hugging them and loving on them, just being so intentional about being a mom. And the relief that I felt being outside of that marriage was amazing, because then I could be available as a mom. I could be, better placed to love them and love them fully. There was a lot of, fear and pain that I had to get through, but I could definitely be there for them, in a better way that I could have before. Yeah. So being at home was quite an adjustment in the beginning, to be very honest. It's not easy to go back home when you've been independent for such a long time. It isn't easy to go back under your parents' roof and have them, ask you questions like, why did you come home so late, But I took it in stride, They gave me a little space where I could bake my cakes, because that's what I did for a living at the time and still do. And I remember the relief. It was so tangible. I'd enter that little store, because it was a storeroom literally that we just converted and put a workstation. And I'd bake cakes in there, and I was so happy, and I had so much peace. And I could close the door, and there's nobody bugging me, disturbing me, asking me questions, trying to get at me. I was able to block out all the noise and, focus on what it is I love. And baking cakes was really, really my therapy at the time. It was easier for me to fulfill orders because that's something that was very difficult to do when I was in my marriage. It was very easy to grow the business. It was extremely easy to explore my creative side. I was able to become financially independent, which I wasn't able to do when I was in the marriage. I was perpetually broke. But at this time, I was able to turn around a lot of things. And I remember one time, my girlfriends and I decided that we were going to spend our 30th birthday on a trip. And I said, this sounds great. Where do you think we should go? And they were like, how about we go to Thailand? And I thought, oh my God, I would never be able to afford that. So the year that we were supposed to go to Thailand, which was 2017, just a year, the year within my healing, I was able to save up enough and actually get on a plane and go to Thailand. I remember feeling like, this is so unbelievable. I didn't even take time to see where Thailand is on the map. But I paid the money, I got my visa, and I went for 2 whole weeks. And that was such an empowering feeling, And the intentional healing period, I'll call it the 6 months to 1 year, taught me so much about myself that I was able to, even sort of overcome all the fear. So if you understand what it is to be with an abuser, the one big thing that they blanket over you is fear. And so the 1 year, I still had a lot of it, but I was able to process through it, You can't rush these things. You really have to take every moment at a time. But it was very clear to me at the time that every so often I'd sit down and say, you know what, I do feel better than I did last week, or I do feel better than I did last month. I'd feel like when I'm having conversations with other people, maybe it would make me, I wouldn't cry, whereas before, just talking about something would make me shed tears, And there's nothing wrong with crying, but I was very clear about my healing because I needed to recover my life. I had given him 80 years from the age of 20 to the age of 28. So now that I was turning 30, I was very clear that I was going to enjoy my 30s for me as a whole human, not with little fragments of things that I haven't processed and gone through. One of the key moments that I knew that I was going to be okay and that I was on the right track was when my friend at the time, who had been a very consistent and kind and very present friend, I remember telling him one day that, gosh, I think I have feelings for you. And he looked at me like, are you sure? And I said, yeah. And it's not because I want you to do anything about it. I just recognize that my heart is working. Like it's back in function. I can actually feel that I like someone, It's great that it's you, but I'm so happy that it works. Why I said that is because I wasn't rebounding. I wasn't scared at all. I knew me liking him was just a result of me receiving his kindness and his love and his friendship. And so that was the beginning of what then became, the love that I have now, which is my husband. We just got married last year. We had a customary marriage ceremony last year, which was amazing. And through it all, I'll just say it isn't easy to move from an unhealthy relationship to a healthy one. It takes a lot of time in between. But I really believe, because I was so intentional about that, and I'm also very intentional about this particular relationship, I'm able to see where I'm still struggling with one or two things from the past, because you never really truly heal. There's still a few small things that will crop up over time. But I'm able to investigate those feelings or those tendencies and sit down and ask myself, are you mad at him, or are you mad at something that somebody else did in the past? And then making him pay for it, And those are the realities of moving on. Moving on is beautiful. People feel like it's a miracle, but it takes so much work, even to delve into a new relationship with an amazing person. So if I was to summarize my experience and share this with somebody else, I would definitely say, one, you are never truly and completely healed. The wound becomes a scar, and that scar is something that you can be proud of because you've gotten through it. Number two, it pays to be intentional because if you let things run their course, in their emotions, you might find yourself circling around issues and not dealing with them and not processing through them. And number three, I would say just take a chance, start that business, fall in love again, just find happiness. There's really no handbook or there's no method to it, but I would definitely say just don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. Life is really for the living. Yeah.
With podcasts gaining more traction across the globe and in Africa, the future is bright for Legally Clueless. The podcast will continue to add hundreds more African voices to the global African narrative, and will have a more intentional move to train Africans on how to use podcasting to reclaim the agency over their voices and over their stories.
So I was one of those people who'd always wanted to turn 30. Whilst everyone painted such a grim picture of what the third floor brings, with remarks like, oh, your face is so flawless, wait until you turn 30. Or you can party 2 nights back to back, wait until you turn 30. And I think my 20s were so drenched in confusion, I figured that yes, the third floor would bring pimples, exhaustion, but surely it must come with clarity, stability, and the ability to just make better decisions, maybe even to be able to stand up for myself. I thought these things would be handed to me by a doorman on the third floor. So a bit of a backstory. I've never really fitted in. In primary school, I started growing taller faster than most of my classmates. And also, my mom was so into healthy food. So when everyone had those swanky processed juices in the little boxes, I had either yogurt or fresh passion juice. When the other kids had packs of crisps or masala sticks, I had boring sandwiches, fruits, and the only snack my mom allowed us to have on special occasions, special being closing day, was homemade popcorn. I was different, and different wasn't socially acceptable. In high school, well, what's equivalent to Form 1 to Form 4, I was in Botswana. My parents were going through a messy divorce, and to ease things for my mom, it was agreed that I would go live with my aunt there. First, I was a week late for school, so everyone had their clique set up. Everyone knew each other, either from being together in primary school or, well, Gaborone has very few people in comparison to Nairobi, so literally everyone knew each other. So once again, I'm an outsider because I'm not from this country. I'm related to a teacher, which in school code automatically makes you a snitch. And I do not speak the language, which surprisingly was a very big issue. Luckily for me though, I formed my own clique with fellow outsiders, girls who were not from that country, who didn't speak the language either, and who in one way or another were outsiders too. While in high school, I found out that I loved poetry, which you can imagine at age 13 is far from cool. Who would rather sit for hours writing about nature or my mom instead of checking out the hot guy in school at that age? Me. I was different, and different wasn't socially acceptable. I came back to Kenya when I was 15 and joined St. Mary's for my IB. Now, because of my shift from 844 in primary school to IGCSE in high school, I'd done 3 years of high school in total. So when I joined Saints, I was with people 3 years older than me. I joined when I was 15, turning 16, and some of my classmates were 18, so they were able to drive to school. I also hadn't experienced the typical, very problematic high school boarding. Most people bonded over extreme punishments that they'd survived. And it's so weird that I sometimes wished I had a story to contribute to that, but I didn't. Most people were discovering the party scene and alcohol. And I, for some time before I discovered black ice, would go to the club and order Lucozade. I still loved words and poetry, which was still not as mainstream as I'd hoped it would be. Okay, backstory done. Let's get back to my 20s. I don't remember what I did for my 20th birthday, but I do remember it was about the time I got into radio, 1FM. I think part of me was surprised that I got the job because I didn't really fit into what the image of female media personalities looked like at the time. They seemed to fit in better with everyone's definition of beauty, and they were loud and very opinionated. And I didn't and still don't have an opinion on many topics because I really don't care who should pay for bills in a relationship or what whichever trending socialite should do differently. But it was a job, an exciting one, full of music, celebrities. I could wear whatever I wanted to work. And most importantly, I didn't have to wake up early because my show started at 3 p.m. Perfect. I remember once the station management had figured the shows on the station, they organized a photo shoot for all the personalities. This was probably my first official photo shoot, so I was excited. Plus, the pictures would be on billboards. I could just imagine my mom driving past one of them, thinking, look at my baby girl. So I was very excited about it. The shoot was on a Saturday morning, and we'd already given our measurements to one of the coordinators. So there was a stylist who would sort out all our looks. It was a professional shoot. When I got to the office, the clothes were laid out in the boardroom, and I spotted some really cool hoodies from a top Kenyan brand at the moment, and I jumped towards them very excitedly. The stylist quickly told me that those were for the men and that our clothes were on the other side of the table. So we walked around to them, and she pulled up a pair of black tights. And I thought, okay, this is good. Until she shoved her hand down one side of the tights and excitedly showed me the multiple ribs on the side of the tights. She then showed me the top I was to wear with those tights, and it had even more ribs. My excitement just evaporated because first, I never showed my legs or hands at the time because of the scars that life had really painfully gifted me. And secondly, I'm on a billboard in ripped clothes while living in my mother's house. Surely there are easier ways to be homeless. So I refused to wear those clothes. I can't really remember what outfit I ended up wearing, but I do know I never ended up on the billboards. I think I low-key decided it was probably because I wasn't the attractive female personality that I saw all around the industry at the time. And I think I decided that was a truth. And I went back to I never fitted anyway. Why should it be any different now? Until I turned 25, I was one of those people whose relationships just spilled over into the next one. We're not cheats. We just move on really quickly. And at the beginning of each relationship, a part of me didn't believe that this man could be attracted to me. I didn't fit into what was defined on the outside in as beautiful. I didn't fit into what was defined as fun. Again, Saturday nights reading poetry versus Saturday nights at Q's or Midas. And for a while, I really did try to fit in. I partied hard, recklessly sometimes, but I was trying to fit in. What I didn't realize was that my identity was already formed, and the harder I tried to suppress it, the more it sipped out. Then came Kiss FM. I was working alongside people I grew up listening to or hearing about. People who were definitely louder than me. They had opinions on everything, and they were definitely more glammed up than me. It's a good thing they poached me, because in the moments where I felt like I didn't belong or I thought I didn't bring anything to the table, I held on to that they poached me. I held on to it until I believed I belonged there. So I started giving ideas, creating shows, leaving my mark. I lost myself willingly in my work. And I loved that while I was doing my mid-morning show, I didn't have to fake a damn thing. I could, for 5 hours, allow my listeners to get lost with me in good music and in positive vibes. And I loved it so much that I wouldn't leave the studio for the entire 5 hours. And then I got moved to the breakfast show amidst very weird blog headlines that I had stolen the show from the previous host, which was so strange to me because I wasn't given a choice about moving, and how can I steal what neither of us owned? The breakfast show killed my love for traditional radio. And in hindsight, I'm happy that it did. The model for most shows of that nature is to chase what's hot, trending, and shocking. Slowly, I realized again that I didn't fit into that. I genuinely didn't care who had done what, with who. Although many times I had to fake interest, I had to fake outrage. I faked it until I couldn't fake it anymore. And I couldn't recognize the person that the show had made me. I was so sad all the time. I was having anxiety and panic attacks often. And on the outside, it seemed like I was fitting in just fine, but on the inside, I didn't belong in that space. So on December 27th, 2018, right before I turned 30, I handed in my resignation. That morning, I told myself, if I get to work and the head of the station and the head of radio were both at work, then it was a sign from the universe to hand it in because it was the 27th. During the holidays, most of the office is not there. It's usually like a ghost town. So I got to work, and not only were both of them there, but the CEO too. So clearly the universe was screaming at me. One of my supervisors was so shocked when I gave him my resignation. He kept asking me what I intended to do. And I told him, well, I could do anything. I could even enroll in medicine school if I wanted. On my last day at that job, I slept the most deepest, most peaceful sleep ever. I was relieved, excited about possibilities. But more than that, I was proud of myself for choosing me, for choosing to come back home to me. Starting Legally Clueless was me creating a space that never existed for me in traditional radio. Everything was so performative there, so fast, so not real. My mistake was trying for all of those years to reduce myself into a space that wasn't built for me. I've just turned 32, and I can say the third floor is wonderful, but there was no doorman handing out confidence, clarity, and freedom when I arrived. I realized that I had all of those things inside me already. I just kept running away from them, trying to fit in. This podcast is such a wonderful reminder that perhaps it's time for you to stop trying to fit in and create a space for you, a space that you get to call your home. Thank you so much for watching this special episode of Legally Clueless, the 100th episode. And thank you as well for being part of the Legally Clueless tribe for the last 100 weeks. Here's to 100 more episodes. Bye. That's about to start.
So we just start.
No, yeah,
Can you hear me?
Buzzy, I'm here.
rolling.
I do my
You can jump up and down.
Yeah, so
What is that idea?
Oh, yeah. I got it. Oh.
as you guessed it, the color is pink. So
All right. In 20...
Anyway, yeah, so he had like the basic amenities. He had, you'll have to cut that out. I wanted to say the bear, and then I wanted to say basic, and then it came out as basic.
And create a space where I could be.
In 2016. Sorry. Adelle is smelling like... Okay.
Let's start with one that quite a few people have deemed their favorite. Kadzo's.
So his place had like the basic miam.
So you guys are like...
Cut that out.
Okay. Guys.
Beyonce. And what's my power? Anyway, wow, power.
And I must let go. What was the lyrics? Okay. Bye. Nimenda.